Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for joining us. Very much looking forward to a great conversation today. I wanted to kind of set the table for this conversation we're going to have. There's been a lot of conversation around educational equity throughout the course of the campaign, which has been obviously very heated and very engaged. Not as much education conversation as many of us would have liked, but there's been some conversation. And most of that conversation kind of focused on the very important issue of finance and investment. There's been a lot of conversation in the debates and also in the Democratic Party platform around investing more in K-12 and in higher education. Those are very important ideas. There's been less conversation around accountability for those investments and making sure that our schools actually produce results for our young people, particularly those young people who've been subject to historical disadvantages. And there's been some conversation around the issue of public school choice and public charter schools. And very little of that conversation has been grounded in the lived experiences of children who attend public charter schools, the parents of children who attend public charter schools, or those operators on the ground. We've seen this issue be framed in the public dialogue in a very politicized framework, which seeks to draw very stark black and white perspectives on the issue. But really has been grounded in the realities of what public charter schools have meant for so many children in our country, particularly low-income children of color, who oftentimes have been subject to historical disadvantages and inequities in terms of their access to educational opportunity. And so I'm really excited by this conversation we're going to have this afternoon with people who are on the ground and who can speak from their firsthand perspective about the strengths and opportunities presented by the public charter school sector in our country. First, we're going to have Dr. Margaret Fortune. She's the president and CEO of Fortune Schools. She is with us. We have Nathan Woods, who's an alum of KIPP in DC. We have Amanda Keys, who is the parent of a child at KIPP in Philly. We have Tracy Brandon, who's the parent of a Freedom Prep student. And so to get things moving and to jump right in, I'd like for each panelist to introduce him or herself. And to talk briefly about what is it that brought them into the charter school space, either as an operator, a parent, or as a student. And we'll start with Dr. Margaret Fortune.
Thanks so much, Shavar. I'm glad to be here with you for this panel. I am from Sacramento, California, and I have founded a network of 9 tuition-free public charter schools. I'm also the co-chair of the Freedom Coalition for Charter Schools, which is a advocacy organization of Black and brown charter school leaders across America. We represent charter school operators from 21 states. And we are a group of people that is about the self-determination of Black people to found our own schools in order to close the Black achievement gap. And that's why I got into the work of opening schools for kids in my hometown.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Fortune. Nathan?
Shavar, thank you so much. Hi, everybody out there. My name is Nathan Woods. I am a charter school alum. I currently work as the senior manager for community relations and advocacy for KIPP DC. And a big part of my work is working with community leaders, other organizers, families, students to continue to fight for educational justice and access to high quality education for all students. And the reason why I came into this work is because education was the key for me. Education is why I'm able to use my platform, use my lived experience to fight for so many marginalized babies that live in the community that I grew up in. And I was also a teacher, and I really understand the importance of this work. And I want to use my voice to continue to elevate it.
Thank you. Thank you. Ms. Keys?
Hi, thank you. First, I just wanted to say thank you for having me be a part of this conversation. My name is Amanda Keys. I am a KIPP Philly parent. I have 4 boys, and they are range in age from 6 to 14. I am also a member of the Board of Trustees for KIPP Philadelphia. That's the newest thing that I've been into lately. I started with charter schools because when my oldest was getting ready to go into kindergarten, I wanted different options than what was available in my district school that was around the corner from my house. Thinking long term, I wasn't just looking at elementary, but also middle and high school. And I wasn't entirely happy with the options that I had. So I decided to branch out and start looking into the charter sector. And I was very pleased with what I saw. And so that's why all of my children have kind of followed each other through the charter network.
Thank you. Thank you. Ms. Brandon?
Hello, my name is Tracy Brandon. I am a Freedom Prep parent. My son attends Freedom Prep, and he's been there since 2014. And the reason that we've been in charter is because the Shelby County schools in my area at the time were condemned. So the principal at that time, they were coming door to door. And when they came over, they asked if my son would like to attend Freedom Prep Elementary. Didn't know too much about it, but I was interested, and I felt as if it would be a good, something good for him. And like I say, we've been there since 2014.
All right. Thank you, everyone. Thanks for that. I'd like to start with our parents, Ms. Brandon and Ms. Keys. Can you talk from your perspective, what does your ability to make a decision, to make a choice about the educational environment that your child will be educated in, what does that mean to you? How important is it that you think you should have that choice and that other parents should have that option as well? We'll start with Ms. Brandon.
Well, it means a lot because due to the Freedom Prep school, they really tend to do a lot with the kids as far as doing one-on-one and being able to prepare them for college. And the time that my son has been there, I have seen tremendous growth in him as far as being able to understand a lot that's going on with just around, just being around, period, So like I stated before, I also like the school itself because they are community involved as well as parent involved and kid involved. So I feel as if, with the parents and everything, once you get a full understanding of the charter school, that it will help out with the kids a whole lot. I try to stay involved with the school as much as possible, especially from elementary. And now that he's in middle school, I also try to stay involved as well.
Thank you. Ms. Keys?
For me, being able to pick where my children are able to go to school is the most important decision I think that I should be able to make as a parent. I don't feel like I should be forced to have to put my child in a school that might not necessarily be a good fit for them. Not every school is good for every child. And I feel like as a parent, I know my child and I should be able to pick where I would like them to be educated, whether it's around the corner from my house or whether it's somewhere that they have to be bused and I have to drive them to. But as far as that goes, that's a very important choice for me. And I'm very happy that I'm able to make that choice.
Thank you. I'd like to turn to Dr. Fortune. Dr. Fortune, we hear oftentimes, folks will talk about whether it's public charter schools, district schools, particularly those that serve students of color, being set up with the intention of closing proficiency gaps. I've heard you speak very eloquently about the fact that your ambition is bigger than that, right? That you're not simply focused on Black students being the same proficiency-wise as white students. You want them to fulfill their entire potential, which oftentimes maybe they exceed white students and others. So I'd love to hear you talk about what prompted you to want to build a school in your community where you're from. And if you could also share with our viewers some of the results of your school as well.
Shavar, in California, the only group of students that Black students outperform is students with special needs. That's a statistic that ought to be alarming to all Californians. The only group of students that Black students outperform consistently are students with learning disabilities. And in a state as blue as California, you would be surprised that that could be an outcome from a state that thinks of itself as being at the forefront of progressive conversation. But it's true, and it's always been true. And those that have the most power in the education discussion really have not been leaders as it relates to the education of Black children. Not even in this world where there's heightened sensitivity to the needs of Black people because of the death of George Floyd and others like Stephon Clark in the community that's in my backyard, and that's Meadowview, an unarmed Black man with a cell phone who was shot and killed by the police in his grandmother's backyard. As a matter of fact, he was a graduate of a charter school. So the reason why I do the work I'm doing is because the education of Black children is my number one priority. Our schools are open to all kids, and we were created to close the African American achievement gap by getting kids ready for college starting in kindergarten. And what that means is that over the past 12 years since I've been the CEO of Fortune School, we've opened 9 schools. And what we're known for is that we've closed the Black achievement gap in mathematics. Our students outperform the state in mathematics. And, you know, we focus on what we call 5 pillars: high expectations, choice and commitment, more time, focus on results, and citizenship. That means right now is that the state of California is defunding the education of every new child that enrolls in a growing public school. What that means for us is that, you know, this year, for the first time, Shavar will have 12th grade because we grow a grade level a year with our kids. So all of our 12th graders have had their education defunded. I created a new school just yards away from where Stephon Clark was shot and killed by the police as a part of our effort as members of the Black community to bring hope to a community in trauma. And I named the playground after him, and his family participated in the groundbreaking just in February during Black History Month. Now, every child who attends that school has had their education defunded by the state of California because we're a growing public school system, because more and more Black parents are saying, you know what, my neighborhood school is not doing it for me. And like Amanda Keys said, I want the right, and I have the right to choose the school where my child goes. And I want to go to this school that's proven to have results with African-American kids because they're learning at a level of excellence in mathematics and English language arts. And the state is now defunding the education of those children. So it takes a radical kind of advocacy. So our parents got together and we sued the state. And it's a live case right now called Samaya Atkins versus the state of California. And Samaya Atkins is a 5-year-old Black girl who signed up for school at the school that we created in that neighborhood of Meadowview to play on the Stephon Clark playground. But the state took away their funding. So it's not enough to be able to educate Black kids to a level of excellence and have all kinds of partnerships like we do with Apple in order for the kids to learn coding and computer science. Black parents constantly have to be fighting. And as a loyal Democrat and an education advisor to 2 governors, including a Democratic governor in California, am enthusiastically supporting Joe Biden, I also know that our party is not doing right by Black kids. And that's something that we have to be eyes wide open about as we hopefully come into a Biden administration.
Thank you. Thank you so much for that. Nathan, would you talk about your experience as a student at a charter school, what that experience has meant for you in terms of your progression to where you are today?
So I just want to start by giving some background on how I came to a charter school. My mom was looking for a school that would help my sister and me grow academically. We were not getting the necessary support or the resources from our neighborhood or community school. So my mom had to make that huge choice about where to send myself and my siblings. And when she heard about KIPP DC, she was excited about the earlier focus on KIPP through college and college preparedness. So it was a no-brainer for my mom. But not only did my sister and I, get a great K-12 education while attending KIPP, we had a KIPP through college program that helped most of us first-generation college students navigate post-secondary education and career. For myself and my sister, we were the first people to go to college in our family. So we didn't know how to navigate the application process. And then when we got to the university, how to navigate that. But we had support from our KIPP through college counselors who supported us to and through. But KIPP was also able to provide my family with resources to ensure my success, not just in school, but outside of school. And because of my experience at KIPP, I decided to become an educator and advocate to continue to fight for marginalized people all around this country. Because one thing that I do know after talking to so many of my students, so many families that I work with every single day, families and students don't care about the sector. They don't care. What they care about is my child going to get the best education in this school? And if not, what are my options to ensure that they are able to live choice-filled lives and become responsible citizens? And I know firsthand that our students don't care anything about the type of school they attend, right? They only care about, look, is my time going to be wasted, right? Am I going to get the education that I deserve? Is this teacher going to be boring, or is it going to be innovative? All right, are they going to, is the education going to excite me? And that's why I continue to fight for choice. And that's why I continue to fight to amplify the voices of not only our students, but our families and the communities, the marginalized communities all around this country.
Thank you. Ms. Keys, I understand that you're a parent representative at your school and been very involved in that capacity. What would you say about what schools, public charter schools and others could do to increase parent participation? And what do you think the role of parent involvement ought to be in shaping the experience of children in a school?
I think that parents should be seen as partners in their child's education. It shouldn't be that, the teachers are the only ones that are educating my child. I view myself as an equal partner in that. And I feel that schools need to make sure that they're letting parents know that they are a very big part of what their kids are doing. I also feel that schools should make sure that parents feel welcome. Whenever I walk into one of the school buildings, I'm welcomed by everyone. I'm allowed into the building, which I can say is not the case for some of the other schools that my children had attended for preschool. They don't really even let you come into the building. And when parents and schools can work together, then the students also see that school is a priority, and they will also make it a priority. So when you have kids who see, hey, my mom is trying to make sure that I am, or my dad is trying to make sure that I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing, then I feel like they're more likely to do better in school, because they're around people who want them to succeed and who are working together. It shouldn't be like a one side versus the other side. Everybody should be working together for the good of the students, because what I've noticed is that as I've become more involved in my children's school, they know that there's nowhere that they can hide from. Basically, they have to do the work, and they have to make sure that they do well, because they know that I talk to their teachers and I am very aware of what's going on in the school. So they know that they are going to be they're going to be held accountable, basically.
We'll come back to Dr. Fortune. Dr. Fortune, as you talk about, in addition to leading and running Fortune schools, you also lead the Freedom Coalition effort. And we've seen both in California and throughout the country, charter schools become very politicized. You spoke a bit earlier about some of the ways in which that's been politicized within the Democratic Party. Oftentimes you have teachers unions, some white people who view themselves as very progressive on one side, Black and Latino families on another, Some frame it as a zero sum. It's either the charters or the district. Nathan spoke powerfully about the fact that many families just focus on the quality of the school, and they can care less what label you put on it. They just want to know, are you going to take care of my baby? What would you say about how we could navigate through the political polarities that are associated with the charter school issue? Do you have any thoughts about, are there ways in which we could try to get the broader public and perhaps elected officials move beyond some of these stale extremes? Any thoughts you have on that issue?
Well, I think the point that Nathan brings up, Shavar, is so interesting because certainly the teachers unions led by the American Federation of Teachers on the national level are specifically calling out particular types of schools that they think ought not exist, or that they've villainized. And charter schools are one brand of school, one type of school within the public school system that on a national level, the teachers unions have decided it's a part of their agenda that particular type of school should not exist. They are blind to the types of experiences that Ms. Keys is talking about in terms of the day-to-day involvement of parents in the school. And those types of things that we would all agree are good things that should be happening in any type of school. And so that means that we have to engage parents, students, teachers, staff who are in charter schools to understand that their particular type of school is being targeted. And we have to, if we want to preserve that school, defend it rigorously in every corner of life that we participate in. A lot of folks will want to compartmentalize us, but we have to bring our whole selves to this space. For example, I'm an African-American woman, I'm a Democrat, I'm an educator, and when I'm in a setting where charter schools are being attacked, because that's the vehicle that allowed me to bring something excellent to the community where I'm from, something that was created by Black people ourselves, I have to defend charter schools. We came together as the Freedom Coalition for Charter Schools to actually do direct action at the Democratic presidential debates. And so we were out there protesting. And in fact, we are still, even in this time of a virtual convention, being engaged. On August 19th, we're going to be attending the Black Caucus, and you can go to the Democratic Party website and sign up. Now, President Obama supported charter schools because he understood the plight of Black and brown children and poor children in American schools. And because of that, he wasn't supported by teachers unions. But when he got into office, he was able to have some leverage to talk about not just the funding of schools, but the accountability for results in schools. I think that it's going to be a long road. I think that, but during this time, we have to be vocal about the system of charter schools that has allowed us to provide something that is better for our children in the communities where we're from.
Shavar, can I add something to that?
Please.
So everything that Dr. Fortune just said, but also what I've noticed in my experiences, for a long time, charters have allowed people outside of the sector to create the narrative, right? We haven't been really proactive about what we do for kids and families and how we bring in kids and families to make our schools better and get those results, right? So we have to stop leading from behind, and we have to start, using our parents, right? Using our teachers, using our students with experiences in our schools in order to get our message out there, because we're losing the messaging game to those people with different interests outside of our schools. So I think that's one way to combat some of that, is bringing in people with those lived experiences and make sure they're sharing those experiences.
Great. I was going to come to Miss Brandon, but we lost her again. I'll come back to Miss Keys. Miss Keys, what do you think you've seen from your experience with your child in a public charter school that you think are things that some of our traditional public schools ought to think about implementing in district schools?
For starters, just the way they don't just educate my child, they educate the whole child. So they're concerned with not just the academics. They're not so much just concerned with whether they pass or fail a class, but they're concerned with how they're doing emotionally, how they're doing mentally. I have 3 of my children who were with IEPs, and the school went above and beyond to make sure that they were taken care of and to make sure that all of their emotional needs were being met. So as far as the traditional public schools, the main difference that I've noticed is the fact that kids sometimes can be just treated as just another number, just another child sitting in the classroom. But what I get from the school that my children are in is that they actually care about my child, and they have teachers in place who actually care about my child. So I feel like the focus needs to be on educating the child well, but also on making sure that all of their needs are being met, not just academically, but like I said, emotionally and socially and that kind of thing.
Ms. Brandon, I know you've had your child at Freedom Prep for about 6 years now. What is it about the experience your child has had at Freedom Prep that has caused you to continue to choose Freedom Prep? Because people should understand that not only any year, at any given day, at any point in time in which a parent is uncomfortable with what's happening in a public charter school, they can take their baby out. So what about Freedom Prep has caused you to continue to choose it as the place where your child is educated?
Well, like Ms. Amanda stated, with the emotional of teachers, they have been there for just more than just being a teacher. Like one teacher told me that she's like a second mom to my son while he's there at school, and that made me feel comfortable, knowing that I can't always be there for him, but there's another person that can take my place for the 8 hours or so that he's in school. So it's more than just, like you say, just a child sitting in the classroom or whatever. But, it makes me feel good inside that, I know that my son had a good day simply because, if he had a meltdown or if another student had a meltdown, that they were there to be able to, keep him calm or be able to be by his side so that he knows that the rest of his day will be okay.
Dr. Fortune, do you want to jump in?
I did. I think it's so important that, as we have a virtual Democratic Party convention, that Democrats have an opportunity to hear from parents like Ms. Brandon and Ms. Keys. On August 19th, the Black Caucus is going to have a convening. And, the great thing about the convention being virtual now is that anybody can sign up and go. And it's at 2 p.m. Eastern time. And you just go to demconvention.com to sign up in order to RSVP for a caucus meeting. These are opportunities for us to tell our own story. And, I know that Freedom Prep was founded by Roblin. She's a Black woman like me. I know that there are fantastic Black teachers like Mr. Woods who are making a difference every day in this setting. And, to Mr. Woods' point, we have to tell our own story. We did something at Freedom Coalition for Charter Schools, and that is we made videos, told our story, and tweeted them at Joe Biden and his top advisors. And organically, on that one day that we did that on July 27th, which is the day that the Democratic Platform Committee was voting on a platform that includes anti-charter school language, we got 15,700 views of those videos on one day, which is, people pay money, right, to try and push videos to make that kind of impact. And this was organically Black and brown people from across the country telling our own story. Now, we may not have the kind of resources that the American Federation of Teachers has and other teachers unions. In California, they spent more money a couple legislative sessions ago trying to defeat charter schools than big oil spent trying to advocate for their agenda. So when we talk about how much money is being spent to get to for them to control the narrative, it's significant. But that doesn't mean that we ought to sit on our hands and not exercise our voice. I think it's so important. And there's an opportunity, right now to go to demconvention.com, 2 p.m., August 19th, the Black Caucus, for us to let them know what we think. And then presuming that we're successful in this election, the next thing we ought to be thinking about is who is the next Secretary for Education? Who is it that should be setting the agenda for Black America when it comes to education? I am more inclined to listen to what Obama had to say from a policy perspective on that issue, which included public charter schools, than what Randy Weingarten has to say, who is the president of the AFT, who is demonizing charter schools, even though Black and brown Democrats are more likely to be supportive of them because of exactly the types of things that we've heard from Ms. Brandon and Ms. Keys today.
Yeah, to that point, listeners should be aware of over 2/3 of both African-American and Latino Democratic primary voters support the right to choose a public charter school, speaking on some of the issues that Dr. Fortune talked about. Maybe we could go around and then we'll see what questions we have. I'd love to hear from each person talk about, some of the misconceptions we hear about public charter schools. We'll hear critics, and critics who are sincere. There's obviously insincere critics who have a political axe to grind, but there are sincere civil rights advocates and others who might say the public charter schools divert money from traditional public education when a parent or family chooses a public charter school. Or you'll hear the public charter schools cream because only those parents who are most able to enter the lottery are more likely to have their child in a public charter school. So that means you get the more engaged parent who's in a public charter school. The charter schools have too much, suspend kids too much, or they're very cookie cutter in terms of their approach to discipline. And associated with that, sometimes we'll hear, the charter schools is a part of a sort of white missionary takeover of public education. I'd love for each of you to respond to any of those misconceptions that you'd like to speak to. There may be many listeners here who are just trying to learn more about the public charter school issue. Maybe they've heard bits and pieces here. What would you say to some of these misconceptions that are often told about public charter schools? We'll start with Mr. Woods, and then we'll go around the bend. Nathan, you're on mute.
There we go. Yeah, that's a good question. What are some of the misconceptions? I can speak about my personal experience in charter schools. And just in my experience, I was able to get the type of education that allowed me to go to some of the best universities in the country, and allows me to do the work that I do today. I mean, we're really talking about the achievement gap or the opportunity gap. I think the schools that I attend and the school that I work for currently, KIPP, does a really good job of supporting the families and the students that attend our schools, not just while they're in our classrooms, but also when they leave our classrooms and go out into the world. KIPP supports them, whether they're going into a career or they're going into college. And then after that, like, how do you continue to invest in students that come from under-resourced communities that are marginalized, to ensure that they're not only successful in school, but when they get out of school, they can live choice-filled lives. So I think charters do a good job of providing those resources and those supports to students like myself. Not all charter schools look the same. Not all charter schools in DC look the same. But I will say a lot of our parents choose to send their kids to our schools because of the experience that they've had or they've heard about has been super positive. So I just wanted to just talk specifically about my experience.
Thank you. Thank you. Ms. Keys, you want to speak to some of these misconceptions of public charter schools?
For me, in my personal experience, the best way that because I was concerned at first, because I have heard a lot of misconceptions myself about charter schools, especially in the beginning when I was deciding where to place my children. The best thing that I was able to do was talk to other parents that have their children in. I tend to like to talk to people who are experts on the situation or who you think is an expert, but I prefer to talk to other people like myself who are in the schools on a daily basis and who can say this is something that we need to work on. With the schools being a lottery, it's not anybody can apply, and we don't just get parents who can be totally involved in the school. We have parents from all walks of life. We have parents who are working, several different jobs just to pay their rent. We have families who have stay-at-home parents. So it's cross-board. So charter schools are able to serve everybody because of the lottery system. So just because you might live in a certain zip code, that doesn't mean that you are automatically preferred for this specific school. Everybody gets a chance, and that's what's the most important thing, is that anybody can apply and anybody can have their child get in. Yes, it's kind of a matter of luck in a sense, but the fact that it's open to everyone and there's no entry criteria for our school at my kids' KIPP, there's no entry criteria. They will take you no matter what, and they will work with you, and they will help your child to succeed and do the best that they can. So for me, whenever someone tries to talk to me about charter schools, I usually try to come back with all the positives that I've noticed from a personal perspective. And so I think that kind of makes a big difference when you actually talk to people who have kids in the schools and who can tell you from their point of view how everything is going.
Ms. Brandon?
Well, as for me personally, I didn't have any misconceptions, nor did I have anyone to speak to regarding Freedom Prep. Like I stated earlier, when they was coming door to door, I just took it upon myself to say, well, since the Shelby County School wasn't for me or for my son, I said, well, let me take this leap of faith and see how the charter school would be for him myself. And like I say, we've been there since 2014, and it has been an awesome ride. He learns a lot. I learn a lot. I'm greeted well when I come in, and is more so of a family base than just a school to me. We're all, they know me when I come in. I know them when I come in, and it's just family oriented to me, and that's something that I do like about the school and the system itself.
And Dr. Fortune, what would you say to some of these misconceptions?
Well, a charter school is a public school. And what I think is that all public schools should be treated like charter schools. And that is, you keep your promises to your families. You're accountable. You're responsible. You meet your education targets. You know how to manage your finances. And if you are unable to do those things, then you ought not be running a school. Those are the conditions that charter schools are held to. And all schools ought to be held to those same conditions. Interestingly, Thomas Sowell just put out a book, Charter Schools and Their Enemies, that talks about this accusation of whether or not charter schools cream. And he very methodically goes through a study of charter school applicants in New York schools, where you have all of these families on wait lists. So presumably, if what charter schools are doing is creaming, then those families that are on the wait list and didn't get in, the schools that ended up serving them should be doing very well, because the cream of the crop tried to leave, couldn't, and had to go back. And he meticulously goes through to the schools where those kids who were on the wait list and didn't get in ended up attending. And sure enough, they're very low performing. So some of these myths are just that, mythology, not actually supported by fact. And I think it's important that we as charter school supporters hold those that are charter school detractors accountable and fact check them and speak from our own experience. The other thing I'll say is that when we don't, the consequences are dire. In California, it's our education funding policy that the money follows the child to the school that is educating them. Now, under the cover of the coronavirus, teachers' unions and big city school districts that are in declining enrollment are keeping the money for students who have left and gone to a charter school. And because that charter school is growing, because they've demonstrated both in regular times and in times of distance learning that they offer a higher quality education, and therefore parents are going there. Simultaneously, these districts and unions have held on to the money by saying they need the money to educate kids in the coronavirus, but the kids have actually left. So 56,000 kids have actually left these environments, and the state of California is not going to allow the money to follow the child. Those kids that have left at the actual schools where they're educated, including charter schools, will be funded zero for these new students. For some charter schools, that means that their doors are going to close. And no one is going to pay attention to that because we are all rightly so focused on how we're going to educate kids through distance learning in the coronavirus. So at this time of real calamity in our country, those that have never liked charter schools in the first place are using it as an opportunity to defund them in the state that has the most charter schools in the country. So we have to, as Nathan says, get out there and stand up for ourselves and create our own narrative. And that means also, for those of us, such as myself, who are part of the Democratic Party, even during this time of unity, that also means for our own party too.
We only have a couple minutes left. Could each of you give us about 15 to 30 seconds? What is your core message that you want a potential President Biden and the variety of influencers in the Democratic Party who are gathered this week to nominate VP Biden? What's the core message you want them to take away on the issue of public charter schools and how they should approach it? Nathan?
Yeah, so the first thing I want to say is I work and fight for all parents and families who want better and equitable opportunities for their child. To quote one of my sisters in this equity fight for justice, Raquel Crutcher, she says, "I work for children, period. Any tension that exists between our institutions and charter schools, a 5-year-old doesn't care about that. They deserve a great education. And that's why I do this work." I mean, I think it's so easy to fall into the petty bickering that's going on between ideologies across this country. But we need to make sure the focus is on our students and our families. And we need to make sure that families have the option and a choice to choose what type of education is best for them. Right. So, as our leaders start to think about really digging into this platform on education, really start to think about and talk to those families and students who attend charter schools and talk about their experience and talk about how some charter schools have literally not only transformed the lives of just one family member, but transformed the lives of a whole family and generations. I can speak personally and say that myself, I attended KIPP school. Ever since I attended KIPP school, my siblings, now my nieces and nephews attend a KIPP school. Why? Because those schools work best for the Woods family, right? So let's sit down and talk to our families and talk to our students and get their perspective about the type of education they want for their child.
Thank you. We have about a minute left, maybe 15 seconds each. Ms. Keys?
Thank you. I just want to echo what Nathan said, that as a parent, I feel that it's my right to be able to choose whichever school my child goes to. Like I mentioned earlier, not every school is the best fit for every child. And I, as a parent, should be allowed to make that choice, and no one should be able to take that away from me.
Thank you. Ms. Brandon?
Well, listening to Miss Amanda, I'm gonna piggyback off of everything that she basically said. As a parent, I want the best for my child, and education is key. So that's the whole thing with the charter school itself.
And Dr. Fortune?
I think it's important that we focus on what the Democratic Party platform actually says about charter schools. It's got anti-charter school language in it. And I think that the most important takeaway for me in this conversation is that we have to stand up for ourselves and fight. Representation matters. And I'm excited that we have a representation on the ticket of the Black community. But we also have to have the policy. And if we don't specifically make sure that that anti-charter school language is out of the platform, by specifically having conversations with Democrats that are on that platform committee, Democrats who are delegates, Democrats who can hold our own party accountable for the welfare of Black children, then this option of chartering will go away. And I think it's just important that we both have representation and we have the policy that is best for Blacks in terms of education. And I believe that Black people always do better when we have options. It's never been good for us to be in systems where we have no choices.
Well, thank you. This is a wonderful panel. Dr. Margaret Fortune, Nathan Woods, Amanda Keys, Tracy Brandon, thank you so very much. We hope those who've listened really have heard the voices of parents, of an alum, of a charter operator on the ground. We're saying that Black people, we want to make decisions for ourselves. We're in this space, in this kind of post-George Floyd awakening in this country, where there's a lot of conversation around racial justice. There cannot be any racial justice if Black folks and brown folks as well aren't making the decisions that affect the core aspects of their life. There's almost nothing more important than the school that educates our child. Black families are clear in polling and the research, and you've heard from some today about the fact they want to decide what's best for their children. We hope that that's respected. And to be clear, in respecting these choices, that means we can also invest deeply in traditional public education as well. This isn't a zero-sum game. We absolutely want our traditional public schools strong. We want our public charter schools strong. Then we want parents and families to make the decision about which sector will best meet the needs of each of their particular children. So thank you very much for joining us today. Thank you to this panel. God bless and have a great day.